You're listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you from the Kitchen Studios, located high atop the historic Raleigh building, located in the heart of downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B Podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBPod. This episode is sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com. Providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. That's Food Scene. And now, the sommeliers to the stars, the barbacks in your backyard. It is Max and Mac.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the NCF&B Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today we are bringing the coast to the Triangle here in downtown Raleigh with the gents from Local Seafood, Mr. Ryan Speckman and Lynn Peterson, and their chef, who is going to be opening up their new restaurant, Mr. Eric Montagne. Welcome,
What's
gentlemen.
up, guys?
Hey,
what's up? How's it going?
Thanks for having us.
Chef Eric, to all those that would go back about maybe 60 episodes, let's call it.
It's got to be more than that.
Yeah, was, of course, the fantastic, awesome chef at Standard Foods. And, of course, he and I worked together for a short while. You can hear all the horrible stories he'll probably tell the community now that we don't work together, and he has no reason to pretend that he likes me later on this podcast.
So many fond memories.
But no, so this is great, and I love the fact that Local Seafood, for one, is now opening up a public-facing, like an oyster bar, and we're going to get into that. But the more important, I love that you guys chose to have Eric be the chef of this place. You already have made good decisions.
Good call.
Thank you.
So welcome. And Lynn, we've known each other for a while now. You've been selling fish directly to any restaurant that I've been working at for the 5 years I've lived here. And so, I mean, I met you right at the top, right when I first got here.
That's right, delivering. I think I was delivering to you at Midtown.
Yeah, and I didn't realize at the time that Locals was your business. I thought you were just an employee, like some dude. I was like, okay, cool, because I also know that you're a musician. I think I saw you play in Tonk back in the day, and
Old Habits.
Old Habits, of which you just played at Vita Vitae
right.
for their soft opening, which was pretty cool. Former guest of the show, Lindsay Rice's new place open in Midtown in North Hills. So I was like, yeah, he's this cool dude that plays guitar, banjo, and peddles fish. But then later on I realized, oh no, that's his business with Ryan.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start right there, and let's start. How did you guys, these two dudes, get a fish company?
Yeah, so we were at NC State together back in the mid-'90s.
This is Ryan speaking, by the way.
We were at NC State together, both in natural resource management. When we graduated, we went separate paths. I went out to the coast and was a wildlife biologist, and Lynn stuck around here and worked in the Great Outdoor Provision Company and their marketing. And when I lived at the coast, I actually grew up in Charlotte, and I was in Raleigh, and then I moved to a really a remote county, basically in North Carolina on the Albemarle Sound called Terrell County. It's like one of the last places you go through before you get to the Outer Banks. And so I was around a lot of commercial fishermen. I lived around them, and these guys, I grew up eating, seafood that came from Sam's Club, frozen salmon and swordfish. And when I lived out there, I realized how special fresh seafood was, North Carolina seafood. And I learned a lot about it. The guys were actually catching it. I was getting it that day. I had a new appreciation for it. Fast forward, I moved back to Raleigh, and Lynn and I, we stayed connected somewhat throughout those years I was out there. But when I got back here, I realized that a lot of the seafood that we eat that's accessible here in Raleigh and just anywhere in general is not only is it not from North Carolina, it's not from the United States. And I started asking questions why, and started to learn why a lot of the seafood from our state gets shipped out of state, and about 90% of the seafood we consume in the United States is imported. And I was like, man, there's this great product that's just down the road.
Yeah, why?
Why is
we're making it harder on ourselves?
Yeah, all this fish that I know my buddies are catching, like sheepshead and red drum and black drum, mullet, gray trout. Why can't you not get this fish in any stores in Raleigh? And so we decided, let's just go down there and start getting it, right? And we literally, the experiment started. We had our day job still. We would sit on the back of a pickup truck on the side of the road on Six Forks Road and sell shrimp out of a cooler. We were those guys, but it was funny because we were bringing shrimp that came right off a boat. It was a head-on shrimp, and nobody knew what the head-on shrimp was. I mean, I remember the first guy, or one of the first people that came up was like, "Man, those are some pretty crawfish you got there."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, these are shrimp." He's like, "Oh my gosh, really?" And so I realized people really didn't know what the resource looked like before it was, processed and sold, frozen in a Costco or whatever. And we started educating the people. We realized pretty quickly that the education was going to be one of the most important things we did, was to retrain people how to reuse the resource.
Yeah, and so go ahead.
How does it even start, though, in terms of you just put up a sign saying shrimp for $5 or whatever it is, and people start to pull over and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll take some."
Well, our first buy was like 200 pounds, from Luke Midget in Stumpy Point, and we still buy from him, and he's grown a lot and has several boats in the water, and we were like, all right, let's start calling our friends.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of shrimp to move, and we made a couple signs and had a Facebook page and a website up within 2 weeks, and within a week, I mean, we were doing all that and started doing online ordering. We thought we were going to work a lot on like a share model with CSF, and we signed a lot of folks up to get that. But then we were just doing shrimp, and people were like, "Hey, bring some tuna," and then we started bringing fish up.
So did you see people, like, how long were you at selling out of the cooler in the pickup truck on Six Forks?
Gosh, we did that for a year.
Probably about a year. Yeah, about a year.
And so did you very quickly see business build up? Like, people were like, "Man, those shrimps are awesome," and they would come back the next day or the next week? And
yeah, we built up a little customer base there, and I realized how much the people really appreciated that freshness, because they couldn't get this freshness anywhere else. And so they were coming. We were starting to take pre-orders. People would,
they said, "Hey, next time you come, bring me." That's cool.
So you found a need for the market. Like, the market had a need that wasn't being fulfilled.
Yeah.
Fresh seafood, local from the area. It's a good name for a company, Local Seafood.
Yeah.
I got to say, there is a magic to the name of the company, too, because everyone likes to say, I like to get local food, local seafood. Oh,
right.
Yeah, it's like my wife kids around, her company is Food Scene. And she goes, it's pretty cool that whenever people are talking about the food scene, they're saying the brand of my company.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, and so it's just inherent. You're like, yeah, I love local seafood. You're like, oh, you mean you like to get seafood that's local? No, yeah, and the company. Yeah, it's all tied together. That might have had some majesty and some electricity of your success. That, and also you had really good product. But I know all the chefs that I've worked with, like, especially coming from LA, I didn't know any vendors at the time. Like Scott James, the chef over at Midtown back in the day, he was like, dude, these guys. So it was quickly known and instilled that the quality was of the highest level. And, of course, bringing Eric into the fold, working with you over at Standard Foods, where we always brought in whole everything, 30 miles out of wherever we were, where we were sitting. Since we have a chef in the room, what is your perspective before you started working for these guys of local seafood?
I've had a long time commitment to sustainably sourced and reliably farmed and brought in product, and being able to continue that and get local fish was a huge part for me. Having so many relationships at the coast and coming from Kinston, it was really important for me in moving to Raleigh to continue those relationships. And that was actually something I was really worried about, because being in Kinston, I didn't know about local seafood. So then moving back to Raleigh and kind of getting to know the community and finding these guys was a huge relief to see that someone is doing this and they're doing it the right way and they're putting money back to the right hands. In this industry, if we're going to spend, each restaurant, let's say, spends $1 million a year on product, you can give that to a certain amount of people. You can give that back to U.S. Foods. Don't want to throw shade, but or you can give that back to, direct fishermen and direct farmers that are actually putting in the work and that are putting this money back into the state. And it's our resource here, and it's really important for me to continue using that resource here as much as we can.
Nice. And just for those of you that don't know, we said it earlier, but Eric was not only the chef at Standard Foods in Raleigh, but he was also the opening chef of the Boiler Room, or the second chef of the Boiler Room in Kinston, Vivian Howard's famed second restaurant. So we'll get into more of who Eric is and stuff later, but back to the local seafood story. So how did it progress from selling fresh fish out of your food truck and getting to a couple of locations at the farmer's market, etc.?
We had to ask our wives permission to quit our jobs first.
Of course you do. Yeah.
That's a smart move.
Yeah. I mean, we continued this roadside experiment for a while just to see, what the interest level was, and once we realized that we felt it could be a legitimate business, we kind of branched out to selling at farmers markets. We got some invitations at farmers markets, and then with some of Lynn's connections with the restaurant, some chefs in the area, we kind of got our foot in the door and learned a little bit about that business. Now today, originally our business was almost 100% retail. Now it's probably 2/3 wholesale, mostly.
Wow.
Our bread and butter is delivering to chefs and the grocery stores in the Triangle.
Before you got into chefs, what was the most, I guess we talked about shrimp, but what was the most requested or best seller? What were people really excited about from North Carolina?
Well, we really started with shrimp. Shrimp was the largest
Yeah.
amount of anything we sold, because you go get it in a cooler. You see guys all the time, but most people don't do much more than shrimp because you're out of a cooler on the side of the road. But then we started bringing up, tuna steaks and things like that. We quickly learned, hey, we got to start cutting this fish, because there's a couple of fish houses on the coast that would cut it, but we were buying directly from fishermen and off the boat. So we were like, we got to move off. Pretty much it was my back deck. We'd wash the coolers. We had 2 coolers, Then we went to 6 coolers. Ryan's pickup truck. That was our infrastructure. So we were started up and then grab more things. And then we're like, hey, we got to rent a space. We got to learn how to cut fish.
And then, I was going to ask you is, did you have experience knowing how to cut fish, butcher fish?
Well, I thought I did, but I was not very good. I was self-taught. I took instruction from a lot of the people at the coast and then Lynn and I pretty much self-taught ourselves how to get the yields that were necessary to actually make money doing it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say they cut a fish, but they butcher the fish, and it's all about yields. So once we got our space, our HACCP space that we could actually cut fish in, we had to self-teach. We were there till like 2 a.m. sometimes trying to cut fish. Just the two.
I'm sure there were some debacles and some mangled fish during the process.
Yeah.
That's going to be ceviche later, boys.
Yeah, that's right.
It started allowing us this really great flexibility just to then start buying more fish. Instead of first we were like, okay, let's get some shrimp. We started talking to chefs like Tom Armstrong at Benny's was the first chef. He's a buddy of mine, and he was like, you got to sell soft shells. Bring me some soft shell crabs. They were big in the beginning because that first summer we started, we hit that second shed, and we were like bringing up a live animal, and people were like, whoa, you got a live crab sitting there. And so we're moving softies to restaurants. He kind of helped me learn how to talk to chefs, and we're running them around, taking orders. But then we're like, hey, let's buy a bunch of fish. Then we can, you bring it up, and it stays fresher on the bone. You cut it. Then you can do exactly what the chef wants. Oh, you want a skin on? You want a half shell?
Yeah.
And then it's just, it just started happening. And what was really neat about our first 2 locations is both spots where we used to sell on the side of the road now are where the two newest Whole Foods are in the areas.
Are you serious?
We had a buddy that helped us a lot with
So
research.
up Six Forks,
up Six
for one.
Forks. We were at When Pigs Fly, about a mile north of Six Forks, so just north of where that North Raleigh Whole Foods opened after we went in business.
How funny.
And then now that new West Cary, off 55 or whatever, was one of the spots we started. So
wow, you guys knew.
We picked the areas out.
So
Whole Foods followed us pretty much.
Seriously.
So are they going to take over the new Oyster Bar when it opens?
Yeah.
And put a new Whole Foods? No.
5-10 years down the road, after they're wildly successful and they've moved on to new locations.
Deliver oysters to your front door.
But it was basically a lot of folks, disposable income, and then there wasn't a grocery store near them. So we identified a need in the area.
That shows your business savvy. Obviously, you knew that that's a good hub where people had access, and probably also an easy place for people to pull over and actually buy stuff. It's not right in the corner of downtown. That's not so convenient to get something. But that shows you guys knew kind of what you were doing, whether you knew it or not. Your instincts were right.
Yeah,
the hardest part was getting through the zoning laws in Cary.
That's right.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. We're just figuring all that stuff out. There's no book that tells you how to build a facility out, or we got some help from the Department of Ag, and just did our own research. And then the farmers markets were great. They were just trial and error. At one point we were doing 5 farmers markets on Saturday, so we had a crew of folks, every vehicle we could pull together to just load up with coolers and be at all these places at 8 o'clock. We're doing Western Wake. We did downtown farmers market on Wednesdays. We did Western Wake on Saturdays. North Hills, the Midtown Market. What else? We did State Farmers Market. We got in there. That was a real big thing for us when we got in there, when a space opened up in Raleigh Farmers Market.
And so now, how many years has it been from beginning to now?
It's been eight
and a half.
It was July 2010 we started.
Yeah, 8. Yeah.
Wow.
And aside from the oyster bar, which we'll get into in a quick moment, what is the scope of your business now? I mean, how big is the business now? I see the local seafood trucks all over the place.
Yeah.
You've got a fleet.
Yeah, we have we hover somewhere between 15 and 20 employees. A lot of those folks, cutters or drivers. We have 4 vehicles. We have one that is dedicated just to go to the coast, and some other others do too. I do a lot of the buying side of the business, and Lynn does a lot of the selling side. We both manage the different aspects within the business. But yeah, I mean, it's 18, 20 employees.
Yeah.
We're moving about. We kind of always start with our fish number. We're moving about 4,000 pounds of fish through our fish house. We're basically like an inland fish house. We go on the coast, getting it with those 4 trucks. 4 trips a week we made to the coast this week. Bring it to Raleigh. We're selling it to chefs before it even gets back.
Yeah.
And then our crew kind of works a night shift, like 12 to 10 p.m. 2 days a week, and we turn that around and get it to chefs on Wednesday and Friday. And we do some other Raleigh deliveries during the week. And then our big retail day is tomorrow.
Yeah, you still as a consumer, not a chef, can get local seafood.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in those main locations, you're still buying at farmers market, or I know at the Raleigh farmers market you have like a dedicated stand.
Like
there?
a stand, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're there Thursday through Sunday, Raleigh Farmers Market. On Saturdays, you can find us at Western Wake Farmers Market in Cary and Chapel Hill Farmers Market.
Okay.
And then you can also, our biggest retail reseller is Weaver Street Market, which we're excited to have them coming to downtown Raleigh. They sell our fish like with our brand on it. We got a great seafood program going with them.
We got to talk to those guys too. They're about to open up about 4 blocks from here, and that's going to just kill it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
We
it's
did
gonna be
an
crazy.
open house event there Wednesday up on the rooftop of the Dillon.
At the
and
Dillon,
it was just
yeah.
amazing. And downtown residents were just super pumped. They're really excited. That's
Yeah.
going to be a great addition. So, I mean, yeah, we're just trying to get – and fish is hard. It's like super perishable. You got to move it fast.
Yeah.
So that turnaround allows us, like Ron said, we bring it up in all these trucks and we just get it out the next day. And we get it. I mean, it takes a lot of steps to get it in that bag to the farmer's market. And you can't take any shortcuts. It's not a novel concept. Just bring fish inland. But Ryan, I've learned it's like
It's a simple concept. It's just it's very difficult to pull off.
Well,
to
that's
do it
what
the right way.
I'm curious about that because
Yeah.
you said earlier that 90% of the fish consumed in this country still to this day is coming from out of this country. What are the barriers to having more people buy local? Because obviously in the world and the circles that we run in, chefs, industry people, foodies, they're buying local stuff and they're supporting local fishermen. But so what is, like, why are people going to, the big, I guess it's the big grocery stores, right? The Costco's, the Food Lions, the Harris Teeters are buying these. But can North Carolina and other local fishermen supply enough to sell to these bigger wholesalers and retailers?
Yes and no. I mean, there's definitely fish we leave on the table every week, and that product could get in other people's hands. But probably the biggest bottleneck and one of the biggest limiting factors for people in Raleigh to not be able to get local seafood is processing. All the processing is north of us, Boston, New York, Philly.
Yeah.
So all of our fish get shipped up there, bigger demand, more people. If it does come back into North Carolina, it takes a circuitous route to come back. It goes through some processor up north.
It's sent up north to get processed and
then
flash frozen and then sent back down here.
What fish does stay local, once it leaves the fish house, it's just a box of fish. And local seafood, we try to tell people, where it came from, how it was caught, who caught it. We know those people. We have personal relationships with them. So it's a little different. There's a little bit more of a story to it. But one of the reasons we do buy so much imported seafood is because it's so much cheaper.
Right.
And that's a big limiting factor. It suppresses the value of our local resources. We're competing against places that have lots of different, much different labor laws than we do, and even some slave trade type stuff going on. And very small percentage of that seafood is actually even inspected when it comes in. So there's lots of issues going on a global scale. Overfishing is a major issue, but within the United States, domestic product, one of the things I tell our customers is one of the most responsible things you can do is buy domestic seafood.
Yeah.
Always ask, because we do, in the United States, we actually have really good laws and regulations. If you ask a fisherman, they'll tell you it's overregulated, but in reality, I mean...
Oh, we had on the flight of the Fisherman Dave, was it?
Fisherman Dave talked for about 35 minutes. I just slowly faded him out at the end because he went on. You probably know this guy, but he told us all about regulations and about when a season opens for this type of fish and when you're allowed to take this fish because you got to keep so much in the water so that it propagates for the next season and all these things. He's like, but what they don't want to tell you is, and like it was all the kind of conspiracy theory, but he's probably right.
Yeah, a lot of it did sound legitimate, especially from his perspective.
Yeah. Well, the alternative is, I just did a talk with Anna Bodkin. She's an author. She wrote a book about her experiences on the west coast of Africa, and she actually lived in a fishing village. It reminded me a lot of my start when I lived in Columbia, North Carolina, on the banks of the Albemarle Sound around crabbers, and she had the same experience. But what she witnessed in her time over there was there was no regulation. Yeah. And there was no fish, and people were literally starving because they had no way to make income. They had foreign fleets right off their coast, just basically pillaging everything. There's no regulation. Those guys are paying off the politicians so they could fish at will. And we have we don't have a lot of similarities, but that would be the alternative. We have a lot of small-time fishermen in North Carolina that would be negatively impacted if we allowed those types of things to happen. And because these small fishermen are basically just small businesses.
Yeah. So what you're saying, though, is there's another side to it for a need for some regulation about when and where you can fish.
Oh, yeah. I mean, regulation is needed. It has to be. It's a public trust resource. If you let everybody take a piece of the pie, it's going to go away. But, I think there could be some tweaks made, whatever, but arguments for that. But overall, we have a very healthy population of fish in the United States.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are some of the barriers for that to have it? I mean, I know there's not like a one-stop answer, but how do we get the major retailers to buy more domestic fish?
Well, it's going to take a lot of education is a big thing for us, and stepping away from tuna, grouper, flounder, mahi, the things people really know. And that's what the grocery stores are always going to carry.
Right.
And so those have gotten more, and we sell all that, but it goes up. The prices go up all the time. So we're working on selling mullet, sheep's head, red drum, black drum, things that are lower, better price points.
Maybe we get better names for these fish.
Yeah. Sheep's head is a great name.
Sheep's head and mullet. I mean, who wants to buy that?
So like Harris Teeter's never going to take a chance and sell mullet. They're going.
But why couldn't they buy the local or even Florida grouper and local flounder and stuff?
Domestic. All those,
because it's just so much more expensive.
They're so much more expensive. So they're going to buy it from Central America or far off, so they can get the species people want at a lower price.
Isn't that unbelievable to think about that? Within our own country, it costs more from right here than to fly it all over the world and ship it and freeze it and all the processing that takes place to buy from Central America or shrimp from Thailand or whatever. It's crazy.
And as Ryan said, it's a lot of times it's because it's funneled through like slave trade, and it's at least as Americans we protect our employees to at least have a minimum wage, a fair wage, and so it's going to cost more. But if you do buy local, you're basically telling the community that you give a shit about humanity,
right?
And you're like, unfortunately, if you just completely stop buying imported fish, it's not going to end their program. They're just going to sell it to another country or sell it to another place. But at least you yourself are not putting money into the system that does that. So by respecting your fellow American who is trying to work hard and put his taxes back into the economy of which you live, it actually helps you. It's more self-serving to spend the extra buck, because then when the street is paved correctly and the school systems are working right, and you maybe voted the person in that you want in the country,
go vote.
Then
that's right.
Then that's what makes it work right. It's funny, and I'll probably cut this out, but it's just interesting to think on Adam Carolla. You haven't heard me reference Adam Carolla a long time, Eric.
I know.
But I do it every day.
I saw the cup around here somewhere.
You're drinking out of it.
Yeah. I saw the cup around it.
Don't do your best, Eric. Do my best.
That's going to be up in the kitchen.
I'll get you the poster.
Yes.
Great quote and words to live by. But they had the guy from, he was a FBI agent, recently retired, and he did all the drug busts that busted El Chapo, right? And they were talking about like just drugs and all that, and like why. Adam Carolla was like, I feel like if we put more effort into fighting the drug wars and sent the Marine team into a certain area, that we could just pretty much eliminate a lot of the manufacturers of all these heroin dealers and cocaine and all that. But it seems like we're not that motivated to end these problems. Like, I get it. I get we're not that motivated, but why are we not motivated? And the guy gave a very honest answer. He's like, it's because of the banks, man. The banks, once the drug money gets laundered properly and gets to the bank account or to be deposited, banks are like, oh, that's just money, and it doesn't seem illegal the way that you have presented it to me, but I will take your multi-billions of dollars and put it in my account and then send it another way. But if that money never made it to a bank, then the economy would fall. And so, in a way, we want the war on drugs to last forever. We don't want to end that. And so in a parallel, we want the economy of the world's slave trade and the diamond market and all these things to exist, so it keeps our established systems running effectively. Mm-hmm. But if we, just the common person, just starts buying fish or shrimp out of that guy's truck on Six Forks, and then hopefully later his business has flourished and now you can buy it at the new oyster bar. Well, you're doing something for your community, and I think that's like how you kind of pull it all together.
Yeah. Well said.
What do your wives think now?
Hello, honey.
If they were sitting here right now, would they say it was worth all the struggle?
I just had a conversation with my wife last night, joking around about it's not so bad. A couple guys that just took a chance and sat on the back of a pickup truck, and this weekend we're putting on a big fundraiser for hurricane relief victims with a lot of well-known chefs in the area, mm-hmm. and it's humbling to be a part of that type of stuff. And we've had a lot of great experiences and made a lot of people happy with seafood. And so once we first started bringing some money home, our wives were okay with it.
Yeah.
In the beginning, they helped a lot. I mean, they came down the shop and helped head shrimp, wash dishes. They were just huge. And not to mention, support us.
Yeah.
There you go.
Give us health insurance. Thank you, wives.
Right.
So it's wives. Ryan and I definitely, I don't know, it's like doing it on your own. It's like having a business partner kind of, like, we can do this. Like, and you're scared, like, am I going to really go into business for myself?
Yeah.
And it was but we were able to build it slowly, part-time, but then we hit it, and then it's like, it was a long journey. And it's a lot
brutal.
It
was. The first 3 years was brutal.
Did I mention that this podcast is sponsored by Food Scene? My wife's company.
Yeah.
My health insurance is taken care of thanks to Food Scene.
Yeah.
Food-scene.com. Actually, this is a good spot to make a reference to one of our sponsors, a new sponsor. And Eric, we'll even get into this soon, because you, Chef Eric Montagne, recently just bought a house.
I did.
Yeah. You didn't use Laura Harris.
I did not.
The restaurant industry preferred agent, but she is our new sponsor on the podcast. She is a realtor, and she provides homes, and her focus is to help people in the food and beverage industry. I bet your experience was horrible in finding a house because you didn't have the right person looking out for you.
It could have been better.
Yeah, like, look, you're a chef. You work like crazy hours, and you're in the process of building a new restaurant and doing all this. So you don't have a lot of time to find a place, and you don't probably have a lot of weekends to be like house hunting with somebody all day long. That's where she comes in. She actually knows it because she's been in the food and beverage industry for 17 years, and she just recently made the transition to start selling houses and buying houses for people. And so because of that, she kind of focuses on people that are in the food and beverage community and helps them find places, so much so that if you buy and close a house upon closing, she will kick you back $1,000. If you're in the industry, she likes to refer to it as beer money, and that's always cool to have there. So if you're looking for a house and you want to have somebody help you cut through all the pain and hassle, contact Laura Harris at 919-896-2697 or go to ncfbhomes.com, and that'll hit you right to her page, and you guys can have a great conversation from there. Powered by Fathom Realty. I should have Lynn do all these voiceovers. Listen to that voice, by the way.
All the voices in here
are sponsors.
Yeah, I know. And by the way, Lynn, I'm going to put you on the spot at some point because you're going to need to bring your instruments down someday. We've talked about this before, but maybe with Mike Rosado. This is a good transition over here. Mike Rosado, who runs MRC, you guys know him because he helped design your graphics for the new locals bar, and
which I'm looking at right now.
Local
They look
Oyster
pretty
Bar.
awesome.
Yeah, his team, they did a great job. He's
Yeah.
a talented drummer. Yeah.
he's a killer drummer. He can play, and he came in just the other day. He's like, "Hey man, why don't we? You need to record that theme song like properly." I went, "Yeah, totally." He's like, "Do you still have enough ability to play and perform?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can play the guitar." He's
Sorry,
like,
yeah.
"All right, well let's get it all." So I'm challenging you, Lynn. I want you to bring whatever you want, banjo, guitar, dobro would be
Telly.
great. And let's get into the studio. He's got some studio time. His drum kit's already set up. We'll maybe do the intro song the proper way. Maybe a little North Carolina feel.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to hold you to it.
And then while you're doing that, you can also record a new song that will be playing at the new location in Transfer Co.
Yes.
That'll just like when you walk in, it's kind of like a Disney World-esque themed song.
Yeah. I'll be on
The
vocals,
misters
lead
go
vocals.
off.
Yeah.
Welcome to Locals Oyster Bar.
There you go. You can do like a little rhyme, whether you
Work
want
on that.
mignonette or
Yeah. No longer in the truck.
It's gonna be a singing menu. Tells you about the.
See, these are bad ideas, but you guys had
yeah.
really good ideas. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Locals Oyster Bar, which is about to open in Transfer Co. Correct? And I believe you guys are the only full liquor license in Transfer Co. as well.
ooh.
So like you've got like a killer, like you've got the back wall. Is that right?
I've got a nice little 45-seat restaurant with oyster bar seating and a banquette.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sit down, and then we're going to have like a food hall menu, like walk up, so for grabbing and going to eating in the community area or on the patio.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a seafood market, fresh seafood, and smoked fish, steamed, grab and go items. You can come in and grab seared tuna, squash salad, and we're running the Transfer Company food hall bar, the Transfer Company bar. So we're going to be running 2 cocktail bars. One's kind of geared at the whole space.
Yeah.
So you can go down and get empanadas from Che Empanadas, and your buddy can get a burrito from Dank Burrito, and then you can meet at the bar, get beers, cocktail, full liquor bar. Or somebody can get a dozen oysters from our food hall, walk up, like check out.
Mm-hmm.
Or a group of 6 people can come sit down and mow down on a 3-story tower of
It's going to be amazing.
Seafood deliciousness.
It's walking distance from here too, which I'm excited
Yeah,
about.
well, I don't know if we ever set that up. So
Yeah.
you had another food hall open recently called Morgan Street Food Hall, and then soon to be another food hall in downtown Raleigh called Transfer Co. We talked about it like way back when I think.
Well, Joe Kwan of the Avett Brothers is one of the he's on the team for the design, the creative design, and local legend in the area. We gotta have him on the show because he's just cool. Nick Neptune, who's a great DJ and like musician and just speaker, and he's kind of done everything, right?
community leader.
Yeah. Eric, didn't he do Just the Tips
Yeah, he came in and
at Standard Foods?
I don't think we ever got it set up to do just the tips, but I mean Nick Neptune is like showing up and randomly throwing down food at Foundation, and like he just kind of shows up and throws a party and gets a scene going.
He's an enigma.
kind of sounds like a superhero, Nick Neptune.
He kind of is.
Yeah.
He kind of
He's
is a
such a
superhero.
showman.
Yeah.
But he's the general manager of Transfer Co., I
Yes.
believe. So if you're going to have anybody run such a crazy, eclectic, creative environment, that's the guy you want to have running it, which is really cool. So there's a lot going into it. And the conceptual idea, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the concepts are 2 companies kind of bridging together to work together. Is that kind of what's happening?
Not all of them, but definitely like us. Benchwarmers is partnering up with Jabala.
Yeah.
Bolted is partnering with Jabala to produce a new concept, Benchwarmers.
Right.
And for us, it's local seafood, partner up with the team at the guys
Person
at
Street.
Person Street Bar.
Bar, yeah.
They got the bar side, so it's been a great team working with them. There might be a couple other collaborations, but I've known Jason Queen, the developer, for a long time.
Yeah.
This was probably like 4 years ago. He was buying fish from us and was, hey, I'm looking at this Stone's Warehouse downtown. We'll do a food hall there. And at that time, even Videri was talking that they were first on the list. He's like, could y'all move your fish house here? Because he wanted to be production. He wanted not just to be a food court when you walk in. He wanted like Che Empanadas is going to be making empanadas and catering all over, and you can get them for your office. Or Bolted's going to be making their bagels to sell off site. So we're going to have smoked fish products that we're going to try to get Weaver
put
Street.
on the bagel.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
like collaborations across the hall and more like a production side where we're going to have a market. So we're going to be making food for on site, and we're going to be like, shipping it out like a production environment.
Speaking of which, you guys brought food, and I didn't even have breakfast yet today, so let's get into this.
Go ahead.
Eric,
yeah.
Why don't you tell us about it, Eric?
tell us what we got here.
So this is a smoked swordfish salad.
Oh.
We, in the whole animal production that's going on at the facility, there's obviously some of those offcuts like towards the tail and right up towards the head that don't always block out and make perfect fillets for restaurant. But that's something that we really focus on, using 100% of the fish. So we save all of those, and that's actually a great resource for us to make smoked fish and turn it into a smoked swordfish salad or smoked fish dip. So this is a salad with some homemade pickles and a little bit of sour cream, horseradish, and some spices in there.
Oh, I can't wait to dig into
red
this.
pepper.
So this is what you've been doing with your time lately? Because, what the heck are you doing?
I luckily got to spend about 4 or 5 months working in the cut room and really working on my...
You show these guys how to cut a fish for final.
Man, I thought I knew how to cut
He's
fish
good.
before going there. I didn't know how to cut fish before going to that cut room, I'm telling you. It was such a great experience for me to see not only that side of production from a wholesaler's point of view and the volume that they were doing, but doing that kind of volume and still that attention to detail and that care of your product, of really looking at every single fish that comes through the door and really taking a look at the quality of it and making sure that the right hands are getting on that fish at all times was really important. And then again, for me to hone my skills in cutting fish, I mean, they're these guys were talking about earlier, where Tuesday and Thursday nights are kind of, you come in the middle of the day and you work through the night to produce these orders. There are nights where we'll cut 500 or 600 pounds of fish fairly easily. And you're standing head down at the table just cutting fish as fast as they can bring it and take it away from you. Yeah. And that's really honing your skills.
I do remember back, you and I had this conversation offline. It was after Standard had closed, you're kind of looking to figure out your next move and all. It was Standard had so many moving parts, right?
Yeah.
It was a butcher, it was a grocery store, it was a restaurant, and then it was serving lunch and brunch and dinner. There's just so many things happening. There was the backyard, there was a farm.
Yep.
Former guest of the show, David McConnell, we love that guy. He just opened Infinity Farms, and but he was running that. I remember talking with you, and I just said, "So, what's your next plan?" You're like, "I think I'm just going to do something real simple, man. Just chill. I'd love to just do low tech, whatever." And then I talked to you about a month later. I go, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, we're going to open up this huge restaurant. It's going to have a full bar. It's going to do retail. It's going to do." I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah. So that's you. You need to have 9 things going at one time."
I also said I was going to take some time off.
Yeah.
That lasted 5 days, and I was like, "Cool, I need to get to work." And I jumped in the cut room. I think, it was about 9 days probably total that I had off. I went and saw family and got right back to work.
And all in that time, you bought a house and got married, too.
I did.
Yes.
Yep.
To Rush, who is an awesome person. She worked with us there. It's funny, Rush, who you worked with at Boiler Room, that's where you guys met, and then she came with you, essentially. She was part of the deal to come to Standard. And I remember when I got hired, she was a host and was barely getting any shifts, whatever. And I worked with her for 3 days and was like, this gal should be running this place. She is super intelligent. She's got a great personality for all of it. She's also your biggest champion, and you're running the kitchen back there. That I'd say within a month of me being there, I was like, oh yeah, she's the new manager. She's got to run this thing. And the outgoing managers were like, wait, what? Her? I go, yeah, she's awesome, and she locked it down. So kudos to that. Rush is badass.
She's incredible. She supports me in everything I want to do, and without her, I honestly wouldn't be able to do the 9 things and help these guys and do such large-scale projects that I enjoy doing and kind of having my hands on a lot of part. So she's...
Well, lock all this stuff down now, because if kids ever come, it's going to be... then you're really going to understand what multitasking is all about.
Oh, yeah.
Currently, as we speak, I do have 2 children in the room next door right now because the school is out of session today, so they are on iPads, and I'm totally neglecting them next door in our office. But...
Daddy's got to work.
Daddy's got to work. Got to talk to people. So let's talk about the actual food menu. What are some specifics that's going on? Is there any stuff that I'd remember over at Standard, some throwbacks that you might be incorporating there, or what?
You're definitely going to see. We actually are really excited that we've been able to get fish freezing and sushi grade fish program up and running for local seafood.
Oh, cool.
And so we're actually going to be kind of experimenting with that at the Oyster Bar. So getting to serve crudos, you may not be familiar, but in order to serve raw fish other than tuna, it has to be frozen down to negative 30 degrees for an extended period of time for parasite destruction.
Okay. Yep.
And so we're actually able to do that on site at the production facility, and so that's going to be a big focus of ours, is serving these crudo fish that, again, aren't necessarily what you would normally think of. Yes, we're going to be getting yellowfin and bluefin tuna in, but like everything else, those are seasonal. Guys aren't here year-round. And what we really want to focus on is using these underutilized species. One of the most surprising ones through our research and our kind of R&D this summer was mullet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bad name, but good fish.
Yeah.
Incredible fish. And honestly, we were joking about it the other day. You can open an entire restaurant and only serve that one fish and fill your menu. Like, that fish is incredible. It's the only fish that I know of that has a gizzard, like poultry. And so we were messing around with, pressure cooking and then frying mullet gizzards. The scales, you can dehydrate and then kind of puff them like popcorn when you refry them. During certain times of year when they're getting ready to breed and spawn, they actually eat so much and they store these massive fat lobes in their bellies that looks like pork fatback. So we did a dinner a few months ago with Andrea Roosing at the Durham, and we served mullet lardo that you would cure and whip like pork lardo.
And the name of that restaurant, because it would have a really cool patio back bar, business in the front, party in the rear.
That would go great with the mullet theme, too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow. So, wait. Take me back to that scale thing again. You can puff them up and serve it kind of like popcorn?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so really trying to play around with...
Is that your bar snacks for the cocktail bar?
Those are that's the direction that I really want to go with some of those interesting parts for me, and that's where the operations that Local Seafood already has in place is going to allow me to kind of follow that rabbit hole as far as I want to or can of the possibilities of seafood. So many people talk about whole animal production, whole animal butchery, but it's really focused on, pork, beef, and, lamb. Not often is that talked about with seafood, but a lot of the same applications are completely viable for seafood. So the other day we were talking about morcilla, which is one of my favorite sausages, blood sausage. The ability to possibly do that with seafood. One of the biggest waste in tuna is actually the bloodline that runs down the middle of it that is often just discarded or turned into cat food or something. Well, we've actually very successfully used that bloodline before in a Dan Barber technique where it's the flavor profile mimics olives because it's briny, it's salty, and so we were talking about maybe venturing down making morcilla or blood sausage with tuna blood and bloodline.
Wow. And
still using fatback maybe from mullet. And so how can we take these productions that have typically been focused on other proteins and turn them towards seafood, pâtés, sausages, all of that. Like we were talking about the fish scales, we need to be able to use 100% of this animal. When we talk about seafood yields, the fish that we're getting in, the fillet is actually only 50 to 60% if you're leaving the skin on of that fish. So if you're only using 50% of the product, you're not being a true steward to your craft. You should be trying to use all of it. So that's going to be a big focus of mine when we get in there is how much of this product can we use. And, at the end of the day, it has to taste good.
Yeah.
Whatever nerdy thing I have going on, it's just for me. But if it doesn't taste good, no one's going to buy it.
This totally takes me back. I miss this guy. I miss working with Chef Eric because this stuff that you talk about, when we were in the kitchen, you're just like coming up with such interesting and unique ideas that I just didn't see people doing. It makes you so excited, like to go to work every day. You're like, oh, what is he going to do? Like you two, Ryan, Lynn, you guys must be excited just to see the creativity that's coming out of him and pushing forward.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool that you guys are all working together because the product itself, the raw material, is the best. It's like starting with such a good raw material allows you to do so many creative ideas. What about, and Matt and I are always concerned about the bar program. And so, obviously, the guys over at Peterson aren't here right now, but I'm sure, what's that going to look like, and how's that marriage going to work? Are you going to be doing like a lot of fish cocktails?
Maybe.
You know?
A
We'll
lot
see.
of rum cocktails.
Bone straw.
Yeah, there we go.
There you
No,
go.
but like, is there anything that we'll know, like a theme or a conceptual idea of the beverage program that you might have some knowledge about?
I think they have a great handle over there on curating an incredible beer program.
Cool. Yeah.
I think Jeff does an amazing job at Person Street with honestly a really limited tap selection, with bringing in a great spectrum of local, rare, and kind of just normal commodity beers that everyone's going to enjoy. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. There is kind of how they expand that program on now a larger scale.
Yeah.
So we have, I think, 15 taps at the main bar.
I think it's more than that.
Is it
Maybe 15 for beer.
15
plus we're
for
gonna be
beer,
doing some
3 for wine.
Keg
Yeah.
craft cocktails.
Yep.
Sweet.
And
Yeah.
then we have another 7 or 8 taps over in the cocktail bar that are actually in our restaurant. So that's a lot of lines for them to actually fill and kind of get creative with. And then on the cocktail program, obviously with seafood, I love kind of clean and crisp. I love vermouth. I love, some nice wine. So we're going to really, I think, build on a pretty cool beverage program over there. And I'm really excited to see what those guys do with it.
Yeah, I'm excited because I feel like I'm just going to be walking there for lunch all the time. It's so close. I'll get on my bird.
Yeah.
I'll have my Oakleys on.
On that note, we got to give a nod to Brian Habib. Really excited to have him front of house manager. He's going to be
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where had we seen him before?
Brian was at the place near NC State, H
Street Kitchen.
H Street Kitchen,
Yep.
yeah.
That's right, yeah.
He's
Then
worked at Raleigh Times for many years. The Pit.
Yeah,
Doing a lot of Empire establishments.
very
Nice.
cool.
You guys got quite the team coming up there at Locals.
And so that expands local seafood as a company as far as employees and all that. It's probably doubling it at this point, because I would imagine that like your crew, Eric, in the back has got to be like 6, 7, 8 guys just to make that happen.
Yeah.
And then the front of the house too. I don't need to get into the particulars of I guess like the bar team is all completely Person Street Bar, right? Like that's their employee or so.
No, we got a whole new company, so it'll be all
It's one company. Oh, okay, cool.
the Locals Oyster Bar, and we're also handling like facility maintenance. I mean, running the whole grounds inside the food hall.
Wow.
So it's going
For
to be a lot.
other kitchens as well?
Not inside of their spaces, but the common area.
The common
Gotcha.
area. Yeah. That's cool. So you'll be sweeping up and
So
throwing the trash away.
Brian, we'll all be cleaning bathrooms.
Awesome.
That's cool. So, okay, in anticipation of it opening, because we all know that opening just a restaurant is a task in itself, but opening a food hall with all these moving parts is just, I can't even wrap my brain around it. So it's not open yet. We're doing this interview like the last week of October. We'll probably release this in the next few weeks, but we're hoping that the restaurant would be open in the next couple weeks or months or so. But in anticipation of that, you guys are doing pop-ups. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll be doing quite a few pop-ups and special events coming up here in the next few months through November and December, kind of leading up as we're getting ready.
Yeah.
But really focusing on the community. What we really want to focus on is our neighbors and kind of bring them in, show them what we're about. And again, having someone like Nick Neptune to kind of facilitate this whole thing, throw a party for our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And as we kind of R&D and as we test things and as we kind of set the vibe, let's see what the neighborhood wants from us.
I know,
That's really important to us.
Mike Rosado, MRC, who did all your graphics, he went to your Made in America pop-up recently, right?
But yeah, the hurricane benefit.
The hurricane benefit.
That was amazing.
So with the multiple hurricanes we've now recently had, I imagine that has wildly affected your business. How is that? How are you rebounding from that, and how are you guys dealing with this issue?
Yeah, Hurricane Florence was a major. It hurt the industry big time. Really, from Ocracoke south was where we saw the most destruction. And most of the destruction actually came from flooding. It wasn't so much the wind. We were very fortunate that a lot of the fishermen that we have relationships with, and just even in general, the fishermen, they had very few losses on their boats and their equipment and gear. I mean, a lot of them had losses in their personal homes. But the people that actually got hurt the most in the seafood industry was the infrastructure, the fish houses. They got flooded. They lost their ice machines. And then the other folks that got hurt the most was the oyster farmers and the shellfish growers. They had a lot of almost $4.8 million in claimed losses up to this point.
Wow.
A lot of guys lost 60, 70, 80% of their oysters. And some had 100% loss. And that's really sad because Lynn and I have been working really closely with the oyster industry, the oyster mariculture industry, the oyster farming industry, to get it off the ground, and it's still in its infancy. And then we're kind of going in this very positive direction, and you have a hurricane like Florence come in and really set it back probably a few years.
Yeah.
So, but we were still able to get a lot of seafood, particularly from the northern Outer Banks, because it wasn't really nearly as affected. And slowly but surely, these oyster growers are starting to come back online. But this benefit, a lot of these guys, it really it knocked a huge hole in their income for probably the next 6 months.
Wow.
So this benefit we're doing this weekend is going to really help these guys out.
That's cool. So of course it happened at this point when this show comes out, but yeah,
but if you still want to donate or get involved, how can people help?
Yes, you can go on to the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum. If you scroll down to help North Carolina watermen, there's a button there where you can donate, and the money goes to the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum, which is a nonprofit down there, and is really the heart and soul of Eastern Carteret County, the Down East section. They're big supporters of the seafood industry down there. It's not about the museum itself; it's really about the community. So you can donate through them, and that money will go straight to the fishermen and some of their other causes that they do for the communities down there.
Awesome. That's Core Sound, Core Sound, Sound, Waterfowl Museum.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll put a link on our show notes while you guys are listening. If you go scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a link. You can tap on it, and it'll take you what we're talking about.
I do want to add one little thing. I won't tie this into the oyster bar, but I want to give a little more love to the mullet, because it's the fish with the bad name.
Yeah.
But we really have fallen in love with it over the last few years. Just to give you a little bit of history about the mullet, for a long time it was actually one of the most important fisheries in North Carolina. Up until about the mid 20th century, a lot of mullet were caught in North Carolina. They were salted and they were sent up to New York and Baltimore and places up north, and it was a very popular food fish. Mm-hmm. And I don't know exactly why, but it fell out of favor, probably because fishing became very modernized. We had the ability to go catch grouper and mahi and tuna, and a lot of folks kind of forgot about the lowly mullet. And it's funny because Lynn and I are talking about one of the biggest things we always get. People always ask, like, hey, what fish is low in mercury? What fish
sustainable
is sustainable? What fish has high omega-3s? The only fish that fits that description is the mullet.
Wow.
And it's a vegetarian, so it's got it's low mercury, it's high omega-3s, it's very plentiful. There's no environmental concerns about the fishing techniques that folks use. So it's just the name. And a lot of guys, for people that are in the recreational fishing world, they only think of mullet as a bait. I remember one guy telling me that I'm not going to eat that, man. That's bait. And I was like, well, so is shrimp.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess what I would like to tell the folks is when you come to the oyster bar, one of the main things we really want to do is kind of re-educate people about the resources we have, and so keep an open mind about what's on the menu, like the mullet lardo. I don't know if we're going to call it mullet lardo, maybe we will, but give it a shot and see what you think. Cause
maybe the puffy mullet.
The puffy, yeah. But it's a great fish with a bad name. That's what it boils down to.
It's very versatile.
Yeah.
Very versatile.
Yeah.
And so, you already described a lot of preparations that you're going to do, but just with mullet, like in general, if you eat it as a fillet or so, it's kind of like akin to what? What would be more the popular fishes that people would associate it with?
I mean,
like texturally wise and traditional preparations.
Texturally, it's going to be pretty close to a red drum, but with a much higher fat content.
Okay.
Mullet actually has, so when you look at like a nice steak and you see a lot of intramuscular marbling, mullet has that. And it's one of the very few fish that actually have intramuscular fat content like that. And so when you sear a mullet fillet or you grill a mullet fillet, you actually get a much moister product because of all that intramuscular fat. But the flavor
it's like
is
the
a white,
equivalent
flaky,
of grass-fed beef.
Something like that.
It's a seaweed and algae fed.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Because although the high mercury fish, or they're higher in the food chain, obviously, but I think the mercury attaches to those fats, right? And it's like this is low in the food chain, it's a low mercury, but it's still got the fats. But it doesn't have as far as flavor, that's the most thing people ask us. Does it taste like fish? Well, I guess it tastes like fish. But this is kind of a winner. It can win most people over if they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like as strong or pronounced flavor as richness as bluefish or like mackerel. It's just kind of middle of the road. I mean,
Still in
there's
the
no,
mild spectrum, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And hello, everybody. Guess what? That fishy taste to fish is fish that's not local or has been frozen or has been processed a long time ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, gents, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is awesome. We're the new neighbors out here, and at the kitchen, right here on the corner of Hargett and Fayetteville, and Transfer Co. is going to be on
Davie and East corner. It's on Davie Street, the corner of Davie and East.
Yeah, and shout out to our buddy Craig Ruwitz over at the Bittery. He's right across the street from me. Also, if you've ever been to his place, just look across the street, and that's where Transfer Co. is going to be. And Matt.
yeah, well, everybody, thanks for coming on. Go to Local's Oyster Bar. You can find information at localoysterbar.com. And you will not only become educated and more knowledgeable about seafood, but you will eat and drink very merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.